This is probably the hardest video I made yet, but it's finally here. Your cries have been heard. Today we'll be talking all about the level editor in Restitched, and I do mean all of it. I spent the last couple of months scouring the internet. I checked the official Discord daily, keeping an eye on any information the devs shared, and I kept like 16 pages in OneNote, full of notes and screenshots tracking any subject relevant to the topic. And I'll be discussing every single one of them right here. No speculation, just pure facts. Warning, this video will be very information dense, and to prevent boring you to tears, I encourage you to jump ahead and just get into the stuff you're interested in. And now, without further ado, let's dive right in. First things first, how close is the level editor to actually being done? Well, we got Twitter, Rex for that. Playboy, oh god, I'm not gonna say his name. This person says, how close are you guys to finishing the game? To which Restitched answers, we're hobbyists doing this in our free time, plus the scope of the game is always changing, so we don't have any accurate way to know how close we are. We think we're in the final stretch of finishing the level editor. After, we'll begin work on story, bugs, and polish. So yeah, the level editor is close to finished. At least that's what they're thinking. Will there be a maximum limit in the creative mode, or will we have free reign to create as much as we want? Restitched answers, hardware varies so much from one PC to another. Because of this, we can't really add a thermometer or hard limits. It'll be up to each creators to keep their level performance friendly. How involved is either keyboard and mouse or control support planned to be supported? Trixel answers, we plan to support controller input for all basic gameplay actions and menus. However, it will not be fully supported for the level editor, and you will need to use a keyboard and mouse for this. We haven't finished our controller support yet, so this will be a later goal toward the end of development. Halston also says, we aren't supporting the control on the level editor because it would hold back the more useful features that only mouse and keyboard bring. We'd have to develop two control schemes for every tool we add, and find a way to make it work with the virtual cursor, shift focus to the toolbar, play stuffy, etc. It's a lot of work and trouble for us, too much. If you find a solution, we might try it out in the future after launch. The developers have also stated that there will be 15 layers to work with in the level editor. You see, as Halston hinted at earlier, one of the main reasons there's no controller support for the level editor is because the level editor works with hotkeys. When holding a level object in Restitched, prop, building material, etc., you'll see a controls row pop up at the bottom of the screen. This is a strip of icons that correspond with the number on your keyboard, and pressing it will enable that action. For example, you can open settings menus, flip objects, clone things, mark them static, dynamic, and more. This is what makes Restitched so promising, right? Because you have all these shortcuts on your keyboard you can use to quickly make up a level. So yeah, I definitely understand their argument for not supporting the controller. At least for now, in the level editor. Alright, let's continue. One cute, neat little feature of Restitched is that you actually drop Stuffy into the level when you're playtesting your level. I think that's pretty neat, and you can also see the layer they occupy, because it isn't always clear on which layer you'll drop them. So yeah, speaking of dropping stuff into the scene, the reason for this is because actually you're not, building and playing at the same time like you are in Little Big Planet. You build a level and Stuffy is nowhere to be seen until you add him to the level, and then editing is not possible anymore. Here is the proof for those who don't trust me. Force return to editor. We faced a small dilemma with the behavior of level editor tools when Stuffy is playable. There are just too many bugs and edge cases to consider when you can make a tool active while Stuffy is also in the scene. So our project leads have concluded that we need to force a return to level editor view when you try to play something or select any tool while Stuffy is active in scene. This is a trivial change that you'd hardly notice. The only benefit we found to keep the feature was being able to build or move something around while your stuffy stands beside it for reference of scale, but even that was not very useful in practice. Input bugs aside, the camera angles are quite different between these two game states, which makes it too impractical to build while playing as Stuffy. Not to mention, invisible objects wouldn't show up but could still be grabbed by accident. We'll consider this fish fried and move on to something more important now. What about the tutorial? Along with story levels, would there be anything similar to a Puppet Academy? And Trixel answers, we're still exploring how we can make interesting tutorials. We don't have any plans for playable tutorials since the tools can be taken out of the level editor and can be used while Stuffy is active in the scene. And here we have a cool screenshot of the pause menu. We have an author, the level name, the time in the level, last save time, save options, publish options, export options. Ooh, that's good for preservation. You can resume the game, replay level, switch game mode. I'm not sure what that's gonna be, but you can respawn Stuffy. You have settings and you can exit the level. And to the right, you can access the wardrobe. Another cool feature of being on PC is that the level editor has a search feature. Now, you can just type what you want, something like lava or root or tiles or whatever, and the materials or tools you need will show up. That's so convenient. You don't have to look through everything and I can't wait. How will users gain access to create mode content? Does it just unlock? The plan is to give away assets and gifts. Gift boxes found throughout official levels. There will be some generic and common assets in the game by default, but some of the assets would need to be collected through gameplay. So for those who don't enjoy gameplay, I'm sorry, but you'll need to play a little if you want to have access to all the tools. Are there going to be keys for other levels in a level? Trixel answers, that's an interesting question, but we're not entirely sure just yet. It's unlikely we'll have a keys system for now, but linking from one level to the next may be possible, though not yet developed. We move over to the next section, level settings. There might be some overlap with other categories, but I try my best here, okay? First thing I want to show is a bunch of icons. I mean, there's no evidence for all of them, what they're being used for, but you can make your guesses, like I don't know, I'm not even gonna start. But hey, here, for example, we have this strength icon. So what does that mean? I don't know how strong the object is. What does it even mean? Make your guesses. I'm not doing any speculation in this video. At the very least, we have proved that there is a creature enemy icon in the chapter list, a bolt icon in the toolbar, and you have icons for spacing, stroke width, and a weight icon. You can also turn on and off tooltips. Layer tooltips were recently added, meaning you will see a pop-up label each time you scroll through layers while moving something with the cursor. This feature makes it easier to see which layer you're actively in while building. However, we know this can sometimes be annoying for some creators, so we added an option to disable it. And yes, people, as you can see here, there are even options for a grid and an angle snap, and oh, look at that, you can even turn off ambient music, which is really nice because I know from Little Big Planet that sometimes that music started to annoy me after hours of hours. So yeah, there's that. And here's an overview of the global settings. These are the powerful environmental and gameplay settings that will affect an entire level. You can change the time of day, sun, latitude, and longitude. No idea what those words mean. Gravity on the X and Y axis, turn on day cycle, adjust fog, and more. And here's an overview of all what I just said. Doesn't it look pretty? Can we change the size, speed, damage, gravity, and whatnot of Stuffy in levels? You can change the gravity of the level overall, but not the specific mass gravity of Stuffy. Unless this is possible with future logic features, it's not in our plans. We would like to add more player settings to the level settings page that will let creators tweak gameplay more. For example, maybe this would include the player speed, locking 3D movement for 2D levels, jump strength, camera tilt, and so forth. We have to balance a line between truly useful settings and one that are too confusing or game engine-y. Here's the screenshots, although small, I didn't have anything bigger, of the lighting settings. And of course, you can pick your environment, aka your background. General features. First screenshot I want to show is this. There's not too much to see here, but these are pretty important features. The first thing is this toolbar. We know for a fact that the first one, which is hidden by the tooltip, shape tool. Before that, you have the cursor. Of course, you have then the shape tool, which we have seen before. You have the link tool, which I've also discussed in another video before, but here's a little clip of it again. You have the eyedropper, you have this ghost. I have no clue what the ghost is. I have found no evidence of this. Then you have whatever that is. Well, my assumption is logic, but again, we're not doing any assuming here. I don't know what this is. And we also have what looks like a notepad. I'm pretty sure this is confirmed, but we'll get to that. You can also place spotlights in the level and choose your direction as shown in this screenshot from Discord from Halston. Ooh, yeah, Halston is an important person if you didn't know by now. You can also change the color of the lighting, and that's cool. And there are particles. Here's a good overview of most of them. Like these are gonna look pretty good, I feel like. I haven't found a preview of all of them, but I have some of them. Here we go. We have these dust modes, which is used actually in the attic level. What's more is this GIF where we have water, electricity, fire. Yeah, all the things, all the good things. While you're in level editor mode, you actually can see the sparkle icons to make it more obvious that there is an effect in place. While you're playing level, you won't see these, don't worry. Here's a nice little GIF of the particles. Here are more effects. You have nice sun rays, aren't these quite beautiful? You have falling rain, you have falling snow, and that's all I could find, I'm sorry. There is also a props to ornaments feature. One of our favorite innovative features in Restitched is the ability to turn almost any prop into a freely placeable ornament at the press of a button. And here is a promo video of that. So yeah, that's quite neat. Another question from the community: can we change the range of stuffies, needle and thread? The needle and thread is locked at the length from where you attach it to an object. And in some cases, it can be adjusted by the player in gameplay. There's always a max detection zone and thread limit that can be changed for consistency, game design, and performance reasons. Another question: I would love to see both global water and buoyant shapeable material. No clue what that last thing is, but unfortunately, Halston says, I don't think we will ever add global water. But the water material would make the most sense. Yet again, will there be water in Restitched you can swim in? Currently, there is no water or swimming feature, but we'd like to consider it someday. So yeah, to working on the core game can't have too many features or there will be a creep and the game's never finished. So yeah, I'm glad the developers know their boundaries. You also have stamps in the game. I'm gonna show you these GIFs now. I think they mostly speak for themselves. One cool feature is you can change already existing stamps. So yeah, if you stamped something wrongly, you don't have to delete it, you can just readjust it. Here are some more notes from the developers about stamps. We intend to add normal and metallic map support to certain stamps. This means you could place a scratch mark on a surface and see it slightly dent in, or place a gold sticker and see it glimmer in the light. Additionally, oh wait, did he just say stickier? Sticker, it's a stamp. Anyway, additionally, we hope to add a real-time wrapping effect during placement, so you know exactly how your stamp will look just by dragging it across the surface of an object. The new tech also opens up the idea of painting, but this is not our development roadmap for now. This new stamping tech is still deep in development, so we aren't ready to use it in-game again just yet. I'm gonna be honest, I have no clue when I took this screenshot, so it might be a couple months old already and already fixed and stuff. I mentioned the eyedropper earlier. Here's more notes on that. Jake's work on the tooltip system last month has allowed us to refine them even more. The time it takes for them to appear is much shorter, and the name of an object always appears when the eyedropper tool is used. Yeah, I don't know how interesting that was, but here's a GIF of that. See? Ooh, nice GIF. Anyway, this is a GIF for pausing the game. So yeah, neat, right? There you go, on to the next thing. Features not present. I am sure a lot of people will skip to this part, so let's keep it short and to the point. Do note that this is right now and could change, alright? So don't be too disappointed. Halcyon says things like movie making cameras, power-ups and programmable NPCs, specifically stuffies, aren't being worked on right now. That's not to say it won't ever exist. There are cool ideas, it's just an extremely intensive thing to develop and not one of the urgent things for shipping the game. Making a platformer game with platformer levels is our base goal, and anything beyond that is extra. Halcyon continues, the game isn't meant to live up to what other games have allowed, especially when those games get so advanced through sequels and experience, like LBP or Dreams. We're doing our best, but we'll only know what's possible when the logic system is done, as everything else, like cameras and NPCs, would tie into it. Restitched isn't the next Roblox or Dreams. Our vision is for people to create levels like stages in Mario Maker and then share them. How it evolves over time is to be determined, but with enough interest and development it could turn into more, in my opinion. So yeah, there you have that, people. Again, right now could change. Let's hop over to the gameplay objects, or the gameplay enhancers as they are called in the game by Trixel. In this specific screenshot we can see fans, race zones and trampolines, but a lot more have been added since this screenshot, so don't you worry, and maybe even more will exist. Let's get to them one by one. Bling Bubbles! As the developer states, this is a cute and fun way to teleport Stuffy around the level with preserved velocity. The design intent behind this object was to make it stand out, satisfying to use, and be able to be entered from any angle, whether it be front, back or sides. You can see our early design process for it here, including footage of it being used in various phases of prototyping. And here is that footage. Beautiful, isn't it? Halcyon sent out full explanation of the current features, along with some potential future changes and ideas. I'm not gonna read all of these out loud, you can take your time, pause it and read what interests you. Let's continue! The Blink Bubbles also have this setting. What does the setting mean? Well, Halcyon clarifies in Discord. It's actually a Blink Bubble setting that lets you choose between teleporting only players or also objects. Ooh, interesting. Some more Blink Bubble settings. You can link together Blink Bubbles by range or a typed label. You can mute their sounds, turn on pop on exit, regenerate, set a regeneration time, turn on directional mode and more. Then we have mines, and below we see Jake's progress with making proximity mines recolorable, as well as setting their detection radius and countdown time. And here is a cool, neat little video of the mines going poof. Let's talk about the race zone. Race zone objects. Another big gameplay mechanic we started this month, of course this is a couple of months ago, includes the race feature, triggered and completed by separate trigger zones tied to objects like race start and race finish. And here's a cute little gif of that in action. More objects include bear traps and firework. Santiago modeled a new bear trap and firework object this month. We were inspired by the idea of a bear trap from our community, and our take on the game's missile projectile is currently themed as a handcrafted firework. I love this, see? They listen to us, so voice your opinions, people. I mean, not too strongly, just gently, and I'm sure they'll take everything into account. You can see a very rough and early prototype of the bear trap working below. Please note that our depth effects, animations and the trap have not been polished yet. Okay, I'm sure I can trust you guys with that. And here is a concept of the missiles we saw earlier. I think this is pretty fun because it says like travel edition, because these were made while the concept artist was on holiday, I guess, or something like that. It's quite funny. But yeah, we got the final design earlier. Another gameplay object which we barely know anything about is gravity fluid. I discussed this in my trader analysis video, but it's interesting. The developers still haven't said anything about it. All I got is this cute little screenshot, but yeah, we have no clue what it does except from the trailer. So yeah, but it exists. We have also trampolines with a bunch of settings you can see right here. Here's a comment from the developers. We've added a range of settings to gameplay objects, with more still on the way. A perfect example of this is the trampoline, where we've added options like jump to bounce and a choice of whether it targets only stuffy or both stuffy and level objects. Here you can see a GIF of that in action. Another gameplay object we have is fans, and the best screenshot I have of this is this one. You see a bunch of things, whether it's Lidl, I don't know why it would be Lidl, whether it's threadable, pushable, and you know, stuff like that. The last gameplay object are collectibles. Pickups are things you can collect and they need to draw your attention. There's nothing more satisfying than picking up shiny, floating, rotating object, right? We added a new particle effect to our gifts pickup. Now they're truly irresistible. Yeah, I bet they are. So yeah, here is more of the pickups in action. Here you can see even more of them in action. Do note that these coins are now golden buttons. This is a pretty old gift. Not gift. So yeah, they are now buttons. So don't confuse. And who knows if it might change, okay? Gadgets! Okay, do note, gadgets are not to be confused with power-ups for stuffy, okay? I'm just using the word the developers here used, as you can see in this screenshot, gadgets and utilities. These include cameras, checkpoints, level ending, and notes. Although I will be describing cameras in a different section because it's a pretty big topic. Trixel describes gadgets as follows. Some items in Restitched aren't quite logic, but aren't objects either. These gadgets have received a facelift in recent months, helping them show up more clearly and fit our design style. Our term gadgets is just a way of referencing hardware objects, which include music, cameras, checkpoints, notes, prototype logic, and more. So let's discuss these, right? We have checkpoints. Here is a GIF of a checkpoint in action. The checkpoints were one of the first things we added before a style was established. It was a placeable low poly stuffy model with a glowing green shader. It did a great job at showing you where your player would spawn, and we still like it. Now the checkpoint object is a floating heart icon. When selected, a temporary visual of stuffy shows up so you know exactly where they will spawn and if there's enough room for them. So yeah, there doesn't seem to be really a portal or something they appear from. Although they had those ideas in the past. Here's a concept of some ideas they had, and here are some thoughts about that. Early in development, we were exploring visual ideas for different checkpoints. Is the flag that raises when activated? A glowing, levitating ball of yarn? A box that opens with stuffy popping out? Ultimately, we've decided to add checkpoints in a more traditional sense. When you cross a checkpoint in current day Restitched, you'll see UI that tells you a checkpoint has been reached, albeit invisible like in many games. It's up to the creator to add handmade visuals for their respawn areas. We hope to add preset visuals for checkpoints in the future so that you can choose a preset look without needing to make your own. For now though, we're focused on functionality first. That's it for checkpoints. Let's move over to the level ending. Are some notes about level ending. Jake has been working on the object to end a level when triggered, along with its UI menus. Now, levels can be properly ended and will soon display the stats from your playthrough. We plan to introduce statistics like death count, time and level, score, gift pickups, and more. Additionally, if you finished an online workshop level, you will be greeted with a secondary menu offering more details on the level, such as the creator and description, and the choice to rate your experience. The design work is a placeholder for now. We'll be polishing and matching it to our original concept shown in a former post as soon as it's fully functional. And now we have notes. You can place notes in level editor and decide whether or not they should also appear in play mode. You can change their color, format their text, move them around, and adjust their size. We'll surely add more settings and features to them over time, but for now, they finally exist and work. And it only took us 2 days this time. Awesome. And here is a screenshot of what I just discussed. More thoughts about notes. Jake has added settings support to our existing note object. Originally, you could choose a custom color for the background and text, but we've since consolidated this into a single color picker to be less overwhelming. Whenever the note background is too dark, the text will dynamically change to white. But don't worry, you can still manually format your text to include color. Notes for instructions helps and reuse the in-game notes object and its new settings to create a placeable version of gameplay instructions. It was mentioned that this might be useful for giving the player instructions during the opening level of the game. Now let's talk logic. Yeah, I see you. You skipped ahead to this part, right? I bet a lot of people did. I'm gonna give you fair warning, this might be the most information dense segment in this video, because logic is actually being worked on right now. Please forgive me for the walls of text. I'll try to read most of it out loud, so the video can just continue playing for you. The first and most obvious question, of course, is, will there be logic in the game, including microchips, gates, behavioral trees, etc.? If not, are there plans to implement this mechanic in the future? Restitched answers yes, we are developing a logic system. Currently, we have plans to include gates and other circuitry. It's too early to share details on this, as we're focusing on other gameplays first. Check out our monthly recap posts for updates as the game develops, or check out my channel, because I try to keep you all up to date on this. Do note this was mentioned back in May 2024. I'm pretty sure this is no longer the case because they've already stated they're actively working on logic this year. Is there anything you can tell us about the logic system Restitched? And oh boy, Halston went on a rant here. Yes, sorta. I have quite a bit I can say about it. It's been prototyped to allow things to move in the level, destroyed on slashing or input, sense player proximity, and things can broadcast and receive wireless typed signals like buttons and levers. You can see this working in the trailer. The visual style has been decided and added for this placeholder system. We're also hoping to let logic be placed freely anywhere in the level, or snapped to surfaces optionally, just like in Dreams. Logic is a major part of the game and will create the bulk of gameplay you'll eventually see in levels. Without it, there's only so much we can do. You couldn't start on it properly before and now because of all the other work I needed doing more urgently. As is usual with game development, you can fix one thing and break 3 others, or expose a major flaw in the way you've approached things. But we're getting there and will be exciting to see. Once we have finished the logic system in the game, I think we'll see levels be a lot more visually interesting and the entire game will feel quite different, for the better. I consider logic as a huge pillar of the game. It's the difference between static and lifeless levels, and full gameplay potential with scenes that feel alive. Without it, you can only do so much. You can rely on basic physics stuff and stuffy movesets to play with, but you don't get to make all the cooler ideas without it. Even simpler stuff like pressing a button and opening a door goes a long way. Being able to make things bounce around, spawn in, time moving platforms or hazards, make switches trigger events, etc. are the bread and butter to me. We're all very excited for it. I think our approach will be to get the basics in, then scale up from there. Basic detection and triggering, then circuit gates, then some of the deeper features like timelines and input detection, etc. At least that's what I think and hope for. Later on, players were discussing how they were gonna make games in games, but Halston had to jump in here and he said, I'm not saying some of these ideas won't be possible, but it definitely isn't something we're aiming for or trying to recreate ourselves. I doubt you'll be able to create top-down levels, but we plan on adding enough useful logic to power platformers. So I'm sure some people will use that for creative new purposes. But unlike what LBP2, for example, was advertising itself as, we aren't developing this with the intention of it being a platform for games. Our goal is to let people use it like a sandbox and platformer maker. But again, I may be surprised by how creative people can get with what's there. We don't yet even know the full extent of what the logic will offer. A community member asks, are you able to tell us what logic components you plan on adding into the game, if they haven't been added already? Unfortunately, Halston answers, I'm not really sure. I think we'll have to see as the feature is being developed. More questions, will there be logic tools to make things bigger, smaller, or cut them? Trixel answers, we're only just starting full development of our logic tools, so we don't yet know which gadgets will be offered. We'd like to add them over time and use our future story levels as good reference points for the type of logic we want in the game. Another question, will there be an item like the controlinator? And for those who don't know, a controlinator is basically deciding what buttons on your keyboard affect what. So basically changing the entire input settings to affect things and stuff like that. It's a wild thing. Anyway, we're still developing our logic system, so we don't have any details on the exact features it'll have yet. We'll update you all through our monthly recap post as we keep expanding and finishing this part of the game. We also haven't confirmed or denied any logic that can be used to sense hardware input, so it's not out of the question yet. But again, as mentioned earlier, we do know at least about buttons and levers. As you can see in this screenshot, hitting a lever will affect things. For those wondering what logic will look like or what the developers have in mind, here are some concept arts. Again, concept arts. These are not what they're gonna look like specifically. These are just what the developers are thinking of. These were made back in 2020 and 2021. And here are some thoughts on these concepts. The idea of logic in Restitched has been through many phases. We've explored placing it in the world as ornaments, placing it midair like objects, and even have a special UI mode called Logic Overlay or Blueprints, like Unreal Engine. All of these have been prototyped in some form, but we find it much easier to have logic based in the level itself rather than in UI. Ultimately, the visual style is meant to play into stitching and restitching. Logic boards would be quilts, and logic patches would be sewn into the quilt and connected via a thread. Again, this is from a while ago, don't assume this is what it's gonna look like right now. Actually, what it is gonna look like right now, I'll be getting into that right now. All information I'll be sharing right now is from this year, 2025, so it's pretty recent. Let's delve in. Logic development. This year, we're eager to cross off more daunting tasks on our roadmap. One of these game-defining features is the logic/automation system. Logic is deeply essential to the gameplay experience of Restitched and level creation itself. Without it, you can only achieve so much. With the addition of proper logic, we expect things to become much more dynamic, intricate, and fun to play. We're sure to spend hours just tinkering around with it. Now, that's not to say we don't already have some logic. We've prototyped the basic behavior for moving, rotating, and triggering things. However, these are essentially just hardware items that can be placed and have their settings adjusted to broadcast and receive wireless signals across a level. They may look and function as logic would, but they're not part of the logic system itself. And here's a screenshot of what they're talking about. They continue and say, we have a lot of work cut out for us. Luckily, our new/returning lead coder, Raphael, has already started to roll up his sleeves for this ambitious task. Raphael has begun to code the foundational support needed for logic to interact with other existing features in the level editor itself. For example, the way it's shown in the craftbook UI, how you can spawn it in a level, how it's serialized and saves, how you connect nodes, its usage of custom scripts to power the behavior, etc. And here we have one of the first and most recent looks of logic in-game. Many of you wonder how logic will look and behave in Restitched. This is a great question, but one we're still sorting out. We want logic to be useful, robust, not overly complicated, and innovative or unique in at least some key ways. As noted, this is a prototype, the final visuals and UI UX experience will come later. We'll update you on our progress as soon as we have it. For now, we're just very excited for what's to come. And here we have some more logic trigger options, specifically the button. Here's what they say. Helson imported a keycap button with full behavior and sound effects. Because the style of levels can vary so much with Stuffy's moveset and 3D movement, we decided to add 2 variations of the button. One is smaller and fills 1 layer and the other is larger and fills 2. Some more information about the logic. This is from February 2025, specifically some of the most recent information we have about logic. Trixel says, we're still knee deep into the important starting work for our logic system. Our lead coder, Raphael, is no stranger to a challenge. This is why we're all super excited to see his developments toward his ambitious, game-changing feature. We don't have much to show just yet, as much of the work is happening on the backend side. However, Raphael shared an update on connecting wires to nodes, saying, if you look carefully, you can now see port indicators under the cable. Its positioning can be changed by tweaking logic node. Next step is to allow users to add cables. My plan for AND gates is to make an extra input port appear when the cursor is near the gate. That way, there is no need to get into the gate settings to increase or decrease the number of ports. It's easier that way for an MVP. Additionally, I haven't implemented anything other than NOT or AND gates. For the most part, I'm not using former code as it was limiting how much we could optimize the performance of the system in the future. I split the code now in the hope that it will make optimizations for huge logic graphs easy later. The simulation already is running on another thread. One last question from the community about logic. Are we able to create our own logic scripts? Trixel answers, interesting idea. We don't have the tools to make this possible and it's not in our plans. But hey, they say interesting idea, so who knows? Movies and cameras. As mentioned earlier, the intention is not to be able to make movies in Restitched. Although with what we have available, you might be able to force something to happen. I don't know. I'll let you guys be the judge of that. First thing I want to show is the trigger zone of cameras. As you can see here in this nice, wonderful gift. There is also this statement. Our wonderful camera tech, Cinemachine, has allowed us to smoothly transition between multiple camera states. So whenever you enter a trigger zone, leave it or cross to another, you'll get a seamless and smooth transition between them. We've also added script support for cameras so that we can, hopefully soon, link them up to in-game setting panels and control things like tilt, zoom, field of view, angle, etc. Here's a screenshot of the trigger zone. As you can see, this needs to be developed by them themselves. It seems natural, but yeah, no, this sphere and this border and shader, this all needs to be developed, which you've done. So this is what it looks like right now. There's also this clip where you see a ton of settings for the camera and what you can do and what's possible. So yeah, very flexible system, just no movies, at least for now. There's also the possibility to tilt your camera, like this. The level setting that will allow creators to set the default tilt of their gameplay cameras. This gets overridden by entering manual camera zones. Tilting the gameplay camera can drastically change the look of levels. Whether you're going for 2D, isometric or top-down style, it adds just a bit more handy customization. We also plan to add more default camera settings, including offset and field of view. So yeah, insane customization options. Now let's move over to the enemies. You've probably seen most of what we know already from the trailer, but here's some extra details. We only really know of the spider enemy as we've seen in the trailer, and you have to note the spider is actually being redesigned. Part of the trailer feedback we received was a slight distaste for the look of the spider. We've gathered some artists and other devs to discuss it, and we have agreed that it didn't feel finished and didn't seem threatening enough. We've asked the original concept artist, Ari, to revisit the idea with some changes that can still be made without breaking the spider's rig or animations. And this is what we've come up right now. Santiago, the original 3D artist behind the spider, has started making these changes to the model, hopefully giving it more detail and a menacing look. We have several other ideas for improving it, but we'll show those when they're ready. Now, let's move over to the more technical nitty and gritty. When placing an enemy, you're now actually placing an enemy parent object, a simple floating icon. Attached to this object is a child prefab, which allows us to do much more and add as many secondary items and scripts as we need. This has its issues, but you also have a few tricks to make it easier to use. All this to say, this is what the enemy looks like in the level editor. It's just a floating icon. And as this statement by the developer says, don't worry, this isn't the actual enemy model. Let's move over to enemy behavior, enemies and damage. Joseph has been doing more work on enemies. They now follow Stuffy when they're within range and hurt you on contact. After a couple of hits with the enemy, you'll die, so be careful in your approach. A community member asks, can we edit the stats of enemies to make them stronger, weaker, do more damage, and their size? Trixel answers, we do plan to expand the settings on enemies for hits taken, health, damage and knockback strength, and some enemies can be rescaled in the editor like any other object. If not, then we'd add placeable size variants. And here we have a screenshot of the enemy settings. What can we see here? We can see their behavior, like whether they're pursuing Stuffy or not. We have the trigger zone, and it seems like you can decide its size and which form it takes. And that's pretty much all we know and see right now. A final question that has been asked is, would you be able to create custom enemies in this beautiful game? And the answer is no, unfortunately that's not planned. Though it would be cool to offer some blank canvas enemy types that can be stamped and ornamented. Just an idea I came up with literally right now and not something we've talked about or planned. At this point you're probably wondering about NPCs, which is good news because that's literally our next section. Most what we know about NPCs is from Discord messages and Q&As because they really haven't discussed this on their development logs. First question, will there be story mode characters like curators? And yes, there will be story mode characters, Halcyon says. What form they'll take, we have no clue yet. The developers haven't shared that. Another question from the community, custom NPCs, question mark? Trixel answers, we are developing custom NPCs called creatures that can be placed with basic behavior choices and then killed as enemies. The spider from the trailer is an example of this. More NPC questions. Will there be non-playable stuffies we can place in our levels to be used as actors? We can't yet confirm this, but it's possible our creatures/enemies NPC system would let us rig together some sort of companion NPC. This would need to be explored more by our coders later in development, as it's not a priority for now. It's more likely that we could make an NPC stuffy that is either an enemy, idle, patrolling, or following you. Though it's not in our plans just yet. Continuing the discussion of NPC stuffies, we have a community member saying, I'm sure they will add NPC stuffies in a future update or something, but Halcyon again has to intervene here and says they're just not really useful without other features to complement them, and also is very hard to develop. Without a camera system, puppeteering or animating, you couldn't easily make films using them. Without direct control over them, you couldn't use them for logic or other fun, silly things either. The main purpose they'd have would be decorative characters or enemies, but even that takes a lot of planning and dev effort. Also, we'd have to create a whole new UI and coded system to allow for cosmetics to work on non-players, then save it per object, NPC, and all that sort of mess. And then Halcyon goes on a full-on rant basically. I'm not gonna read all of this, but basically NPCs is really complicated to develop, at least at the level that most community members want. And if you really want to know why it's so complicated, read all of this. I'm gonna continue to more interesting stuff. Halcyon says, I would also love to have them, and I know a lot of us on the team would. And then continues, I think that's the most likely scenario. And he speaks here of it being developed after the game has launched. If the game is active enough and there's interest and positive reception, we'd eventually try to add ambitious new features and updates over time. Okay, I think we've talked enough about what will not be present. Let's talk about what will actually be present. Trixel has been working on dialogue boxes or pop-ups. They're saying we're getting to a point in development where logic is being properly worked on. This means we'll be adding new gameplay gadgets and HUD-based features soon enough. One example of that is an in-game dialogue system. You've had many concepts for this over the years, but Halcyon has revisited the idea for a simple yet effective approach in displaying character names and text. And here you can see a preview of that. It looks good for how quickly it's probably being developed. Halcyon adds that this is a concept image for a dialogue box. Community member asks, what can you do with it? Halcyon says it would likely be a piece of logic that you can adjust settings for, name, text, formatting, and then trigger it to open a dialogue from characters. He then says we also have nodes that can be placed in the world space itself. So there clearly is a difference between in-game nodes and the dialogue. It's a bit different. One more bonus question, which is not really related to the level editor, but it's close enough related that I'm gonna add it anyway. Will we be able to use mic to animate the mouth to move in level create mode? This guy of course assumes there will be NPC actors or stuffies, which has not been confirmed at all. Quite the opposite of we discussed before, but anyway, Trixel says we aren't planning for in-game voice chat at the moment, but that would be very cool when we do add it. So as you can see, Trixel likes most of the ideas we're suggesting. It's just that they don't want to be too ambitious because they are working on this game in their free time as a hobby. So they really can't do everything. Music is a surprisingly big topic also to be discussed. First of all, we have to discuss the elephant in the room. Will we be able to edit music? And Restitched says we have no plans for music editing features because it's a very complex and resource intensive thing to develop. They also mentioned this in the Discord. No, we have no plans for custom music creation tools. Yippee asks, will the game have copyrighted music or just original? And Trixel says we're only planning for original music at the moment due to legal and licensing complications. They also mentioned this on X. Due to legal and licensing reasons, we're only planning to include music from the team's dedicated composer. But this is an interesting part, which is why I added it. This may change in the future, but we're very proud of the music we have and are assuring there is a wide variety. So yeah, it all depends on the success of the game, I'm assuming. And here is a screenshot of the music in game. And as you can see, there's a lot of it, a lot. So yeah, I don't think we need to worry there. Some more notes about editing music. You can modify the volume, pitch, including reverse music playing, detection radius, and more. When you enter the zone of one music track, any formerly activated music will stop playing and be replaced by the latest trigger. And as you can see in this clip, here, you can change the pitch, as they've stated earlier. Here's a screenshot of a sphere, capsule shades trigger. But this is a lie, people, because they say, unfortunately, this was a technical oversight with how Unity handles sphere colliders. While it's technically possible to create a mesh collider that stretches to the sphere shape, we want to optimize code, time, and performance, and as such, we restricted collider stretching to only the box shape. Damn. So yeah, you can make a sphere, you just can't make like a capsule, okay? More thoughts. Box trigger zones can be adjusted separately on the X, Y, and Z axis. However, sphere triggers can only be resized overall, with each axis tied together into one slider. But honestly, you can probably do most things you want to do with the sphere and the box shape. No need for a capsule. This is the physics section. I thought this needed its own section because we have quite some information on this, which I think is interesting. First of all, we have to make the comparison to LBP because Restitched is not similar in the physics like at all. The first comment is about destroyability. We have a community member asking, what about destruction effects like the bombs in LBP? You know, how explosions were digging into the material. And you have to know, bombs don't currently cut into any surfaces. This is a big difference from LBP, which really was more like a playground, which is not the case here in Restitched. Another big question is whether Restitched is 2D or 3D. And, you know, it's complicated. No, it's not complicated, it's just not really that straightforward. First of all, let's mention this. Our mesh generation system and its collaging only works within layered segments. So shapes like spheres, ramps and pyramids are currently not possible. In the Discord, Flu asks a very interesting question. So, if something falls, it could tumble into a different layer without a layer mover? Which Helston answers no. 3D physics is just a technicality on the dev side. It feels more or less the same to the players. This comment actually surprised me because I really thought it was more like 3D game, but you know, it's not, it's still, it's in 2D. Here's more proof of that, because there actually was a 3D rotation bug at one point. When grouping objects, there was a bug that objects were tilting as if the game were in 3D. And apparently that's not intended, as you can see on this screenshot. I thought this was a thing that could happen, but no, things are supposed to remain in layer. Here's a good explanation I found. Restitched is best seen and played as a diorama stage, where you have limited depth to build with, but can traverse in 3D. Not quite isometric, but not quite traditional 3D or a 2.5D. And this is, you know, kind of where the confusion comes from. Here's some more food for thought. Will there be a way to disable manual layer changing? And Restitched says, Stuffy is a fully 3D character in the world, so disabling their ability to move in and out of the scene isn't currently possible. You could probably work around this with future logic or blocking the area with invisible walls. Arcadius continues, it'd be cool if there was an easy way of making purely 2D levels with semi-solids, but it's okay. Restitched says, we'll make a note of it in case the opportunity arises. Changing this sort of thing can be very tricky depending on how the player and the code is set up. We can't make any promises, but it's on our radar. So, hopefully you have some thoughts now on how the physics work in Restitched. It's like, I think the material remains in 2D, but this character Stuffy moves in 3D. It's tricky, but I think it's something we'll only know the answer to once we get our hands on the game. I have more to share about physics, specifically weight. This is what has been shared about weight before. Some materials will have a heavier default weight than others. As you can see in this GIF, metal is of course heavier than whatever this fabric is on the right. Trixel says, as an example, each item in Restitched is set up to be default, metal, wood, wet, etc. Each of these now hold its own default weight alongside the existing purpose of standing footstep sounds. Another physics related question, just how small and thin can materials get before they disappear? And this is what we currently have. I would say it depends on the bevel and material type, but currently it can go roughly this small without disappearing. We haven't yet coded in the minimum limit for the cursor to scale to though. Here is another screenshot, and Halson continues with saying, as always, I can't promise this will be the same result in the final game, but that is the current setup. If you think it's helpful to keep this small of a size possible, then I can make a note of that whenever we impose minimum skill limits. Then we also have some materials which have moving shaders or something like that. We have this acid pool material, and we also have jelly. The jelly jam building material is this goopy and flowing material, and it reacts to light by illuminating, which is quite neat. I'm definitely making a level with this. It was originally a static texture, but we animated it at the community's request. So keep those requests going, people. They definitely listen. Speaking of acid and jelly, let's start talking about hazards. Here's what Trixel has to say about hazards. We've already begun using this new script to create new visuals for some of our planned letalities. So far, we've implemented or re-implemented electricity, honey, ice, fire, quicksand, acid, and more. Why do they say and more? I want to know the specifics here, okay? Anyway, when we implement lethal types into a more accessible system, we expect all building materials to be made easily lethal with the click of a lethal tool or via setting choice on the object. Below is an example of how early ice should look when applied over top an existing brushed material. Let's now delve deeper into what we actually know about some of the hazards. First off, quicksand. We've refined our quicksand shader to be a bit more realistic. It now uses a flow map effect instead of a basic painted texture. We refined it later with particle effects that can spawn around the edges, indicating that it's a special and lethal material. And here is some of that quicksand in action. You might be wondering, how is this actually lethal? Well, we have some footage of that as well. Quicksand sinking. Joss has started to wrap up his work on the quicksand hazard. Stuffy can now sink after being in contact with the material for too long. I wonder if you start sinking immediately, or once you start sinking, it's, that is inevitable. But yeah, these developers, sometimes I wish the developers shared more about this kind of stuff, but this GIF is all we have right now. Next hazard to discuss is fire. Ouchie! When implementing lethality support, we also added a way for Stuffy to get burned on the first bounce with fire related things. If you touch a lethal thing within a couple of seconds after the first bounce, Stuffy dies. We're still working on the visuals for this, including shader effects and the player animations, etc. And here we have a GIF of that, of course, work in progress. The last hazard we know anything about is honey. You've reused existing custom shaders to make a new flowing honey material that reacts to lighting. Additionally, it will affect Stuffy by putting them into a sticky walk where their speed is slower. This will probably be annoying when dealing with enemies or mines, but other than that, who cares about being slow, right? Let's get into another juicy section, level sharing. The gist of it is Restitched will be using the Steam Workshop to host player levels. And this is also the reason why it would be very tricky to port Restitched to consoles, but that's a topic for another time. Cursed asks, will the game be exclusive to Steam? Yes, Restitched will be a Steam exclusive title. This is because we fully rely on the Steam Workshop to handle our online features. Restitched also says on another comment, Restitched on consoles could be amazing. However, the game was fully designed with PC in mind. And console game would be a whole separate effort. We rely on Steam Workshop for creations and multiplayer features. The level editor is also exclusive to the mouse and keyboard for now. Can we search for and play community levels natively in-game like other similar games? Or do you have to quit out and only get levels from the workshop? Yes, you can browse and publish levels using the in-game menus. You can even browse levels by category, filters, and search. We call this the workshop in the game. Restitched is fully based on UGC, so you can create and share levels or outfits either in-game or from Steam. A community member says, okay, so community levels and whatnot are primarily going to be off of Workshop? One of the developers says, yes, we use Steam Workshop for managing community levels / outfits in the game. There are in-game menus that you can use for downloading, publishing, viewing, favoriting, etc. This difference between the Steam Workshop and the Workshop in-game has been confusing players. I get that. I mean, they have the same name, so that's totally causing some confusion. But Halcyon clarifies here that Steam Workshop is basically the server and interface that allows people to post creations for each game. It's free to use if your game is registered on Steam. Steam provides support for you to link it up in your game if the dev wants to. So you can browse Steam Workshop levels in the game, yes. You can also browse it on the web if you use their website, but we have an in-game menu to search, filter, etc. There are also some questions about whether you have to download the game or not, and Halson says, you designed it in a way that levels are only temporarily loaded for as long as you play them. They don't stay on your device. Unless a creator has allowed you to download them, then you can add them to your My Levels section. You've probably seen this from the trailer, but here is a screenshot of it, and here's one of their newest concepts of the workshop in-game. Will the design of the workshop change to a bit more flavor, like LBP with the earth showing while sliding through levels? Restitched says we're always refining and polishing, but this is very close to our final vision for it. We have some more information about how the level details will be shown. A community member asks, is there gonna be a level info like a description and what goodies, prizes you've blah blah blah. Trexel says, we do offer a level description for published creations, but we can't confirm this for story content yet. For gifts collected, we'd love to show this per level, but that's not a developed or planned feature as of now. And this is pretty much the only screenshot we have of what publishing a level looks like. You have level info, description, and privacy settings. Here is also a screenshot of what level information would look like, and as they've stated, this design is far from final, but hey, it's something to go off from. You can see the amount of plays, favorites, upvotes, comments, top score, whether copying is allowed, when it was posted, and when it was updated. Here is a comment about leaving reviews. Restitched says that sharing levels is the heart and soul of the game, and leaving reviews comments is handled by the Steam Workshop. So this should be possible as well. Doesn't seem like it's possible in-game though. Ren asks if there is a content rating, like a policy on mature content, and Trixel says online interactions are not rated, though we will moderate any excessive vulgar or violent content. Casual horror and fake blood references are likely fine, but won't be featured promoted on official channels. Some more questions from a Q&A. How will published level icons work? Like, can you make them with stamps in game, upload your own image, or will it be chosen as a preview of the level? The answer is, when you save a level, the game captures a screenshot of the level's editor's camera position. This serves as a default level thumbnail and is used both in the My Levels menu and the workshop. We think it's important to make appealing level thumbnails, but we also still want them to be representative of the actual creation, meaning you get to see what the level really looks like. So we're hoping to add a custom image upload for workshop thumbnails, but also look into in-game level captures. One final comment about connecting levels. Fate asks, will we be able to connect levels to each other? In other words, if I make a really big level that requires more space than I've already used, and find that I need to finish my creation in another level, and have the player seamlessly transfer from one to the other, will that be possible? The answer, if Steam Workshop allows this, we think it does, then it's certainly possible to add. We've not added a feature like this yet, but we'll be looking into it later on. Steam also offers a collections feature that acts as a playlist for multiple workshop items. The Junkler asks, can we make a world with levels and share it like an LWP? The answer, you can only publish individual levels, but I believe Steam offers a playlist-like feature that will let you group certain creations together into one collection. And Daniel, one of the developers, also confirms this. The Steam Workshop already allows for that. Let's talk about modded content. I'm gonna keep this short because Trixel made a huge statement on this. I'll link it in the description below. But the short answer is no, they won't be supported, for a lot of reasons which you can read in this article. Trixel has also shared on Discord, mods won't be supported on Steam Workshop. We also won't officially promote them for as long as we don't offer the native tools to allow it. Should folks mod the game, we usually wouldn't mind. However, any mods that raise eyebrows for copyrighted content or pose a risk to the game and its stability may be removed by us, even if they're hosted outside of Steam Workshop. Another mod related question that was asked is, will we be able to import .fbx, .obg assets into our levels? No clue what those are, but I guess that's something modders know what it is. The answer is, we have no plans for supporting modded content and custom imports. We have a full statement as I discussed before. Okay, I'm starting to run out of breath, but we're reaching the final section. Multiplayer. The question is, will there be multiplayer? Dante Drevon asks, will level creation be co-op with friends? It's kinda a huge thing for me. And Halson says, we hope so, we don't just know yet. Creation together would basically be the most complex part of developing multiplayer. But good news, they have tested it. In this devlog, they actually talk a bit about it. Building together, another exciting thing we tested this month, but did not develop for specifically, is networking. Deep in the dev menu is a networking feature that dates back to the first 2 years of development. As the game has changed over time, we expected this feature to break and nobody has tested it since. Halston and Thomas ran the game on 2 different PCs, connected through networking debug menu, and were able to see real-time updates as they smeared materials, placed things in the scene, changed level settings, etc. So wow, it hasn't been touched for 2 years and still works. Look at this. That is very promising, guys. They do say it's still very rough around the edges and doesn't properly sync with physics or some features, but to see our framework of multiplayer doing its job is still very impressive and promising for the future. There are also some comments on online chats. They say it's important to note that we do not have plans for online chat features in-game right now because it would take a lot of effort and time we unfortunately don't have yet. However, the idea isn't off the table for the future and we've included it here as a mock-up. There's also the question if there will be voice chat in-game, which is funnily asked through a voice message. Trixel answers, we unfortunately aren't planning to support voice chat for multiplayer, at least at first. But it's something we'd like to look into if you find the time and resources later on. Finally it's done. I have like 2 hours of recording footage, but it's done. I hope you enjoyed this video, however long it may end up. And if you found any value in it, please show some appreciation by, whatever, I don't know what to say, I just wanna, is that a motorcycle passing by? Oh god, I'm so done with this video. I hope it was valuable to you guys, okay? I'm gonna take a nap now, bye!